Every state has that one lake locals don't talk about too loudly. We found them anyway. The waters that actually produce the biggest fish in the country. This isn't a list of pretty scenery or tourist spots. These are the lakes where the fish are genuinely massive and the records keep falling. Texas sits at the top of the conversation, and it's not even close. The Lone Star State has 10 lakes in the national top 100 rankings. Lake Fork alone holds the Texas state record largemouth, plus the next 5 heaviest catches ever documented in the state. That's 1 lake, 6 records. Since 1986, the Texas ShareLunker program has verified 3,648 bass over 8 pounds, all from Texas waters. Florida punches just as hard. Year-round warm water means bass grow faster there than almost anywhere else in the country. Lake Okeechobee covers over 730 square miles and regularly produces largemouth averaging 7 to 10 pounds. Some push past 12. California surprises people. Clear Lake ranked number 1 in the entire country, beating every lake in Texas and Florida. Volcanic soils and a Mediterranean climate push bass growth rates there to nearly double what you'd see in typical waters. 17-pound fish have come out of Clear Lake. Derwin Chang described his best day there simply: second cast, a bass. Third cast, another. Fourth cast, another. He was culling fish by 8 in the morning. Up in Minnesota, Lake of the Woods earns its nickname honestly. 14,500 islands and some of the best walleye fishing on the planet. Real quick, my name is Jake Watson. I have been an angler for over 20 years, ever since I was a little kid when my father used to take me fishing. I have dedicated this channel to helping share my passion with like-minded anglers like me, as I plan to reveal every secret there is about fishing, taking it from a game of luck to an actual skill set. So it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Anyways, let's continue. Lake Erie produces more walleye than any other lake in America. Its shallow depth creates spawning conditions the deeper Great Lakes simply can't match. Lake Guntersville in Alabama covers 70,000 acres and hosts major league fishing tournaments regularly. Spring and fall, the bass fishing there is genuinely world class. Then there's O.H. Ivy in Texas, a lake that came out of nowhere. It produced 30 ShareLunker bass in just the first 4 months of 2023. Leah Ann Powell caught a 12-pound 3-ounce largemouth there on a Demiki rig through flooded timber. It became an IGFA world record. She calls it her favorite water, bar none. Lake Champlain on the Vermont-New York border is a completely different fishery. Smallmouth bass there are the target, and June through August they are absolutely on fire. Jake Angulis once located a massive school of smallmouth on a rocky hump dropping from 60 feet to 30. His best 5 fish that day totaled over 100 inches combined. Lake St. Clair sits between Lake Huron and Lake Erie near Detroit. It's 420 square miles of diverse game fish that most people completely overlook. Folsom Lake in California is what anglers call a love-hate relationship. Crystal clear water and granite boulders make it brutally difficult until it turns on completely. Joseph Tax documented 100 fish days there using a simple drop shot. When Folsom clicks, it clicks hard and makes every tough day worth it. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake on Earth by surface area, 31,700 square miles. The fish that live in those cold depths grow old and enormous. Every region has its standout water. The South has volume and size, the Great Lakes have diversity, and the West has quality that makes up for lower numbers. We're going state by state through every single one. The lakes are ranked, the fish are real, and some of these picks are going to genuinely surprise you. New York has 6 world-class fisheries in the national top 100. Cayuga Lake is the one serious smallmouth anglers keep circling back to. Justin Hausner has fished Cayuga for over a decade and says wind is everything there. North or south, it makes that water genuinely angry. Early spring, the north end shallows warm first. That's when topwater frogs start producing, and the fish are stacked tight near the weed edges. After sunrise, Hausner switches to skipping a Senko under docks, then jerkbaits down weed lines, then a jig hopped across rock piles. 3 completely different presentations. One morning, Sam Rayburn Reservoir in Texas is a different animal entirely. East and West Coast styles combined in one place. There's a reason the Big Bass Splash runs out of Sam Rayburn. Consistently big fish, diverse cover, and enough water that pressure doesn't kill the bite. Lake Eufaula on the Oklahoma-Alabama border is built for punching and pitching. Heavy vegetation, shallow flats, and bass that absolutely bury themselves in the thickest stuff they can find. Lake Ontario gets overlooked because its siblings get all the attention. But the annual salmon runs near Oswego and Rochester draws serious anglers every fall without fail. Kentucky Lake stretches across Tennessee and Kentucky for 184 miles. It's one of the largest man-made lakes in the country and produces crappie in staggering numbers. Lake Michigan covers 22,400 square miles and has an entire charter industry built around it. Coho salmon, Chinook, lake trout, the diversity there is hard to match. Lake Tahoe sits at 6,200 feet elevation on the California-Nevada border. Strict 5 fish limits have kept the fishery healthy for decades. The clarity there cuts both ways. You can see fish in 30 feet of water, and they can absolutely see you coming. Striped bass on Lake Powell regularly push past 40 pounds. The canyon structure creates ambush points that concentrate fish in ways flat water reservoirs simply cannot. Utah's tiger trout record sits at 19 pounds, 2 ounces, set in 2013. There are waters in that state where the next record is probably already swimming. South Carolina's Santee Cooper Lakes still hold a channel catfish world record from 1964, 58 pounds. 60 years later, nobody has beaten it. That record has outlasted careers, generations of tackle, and every improvement in fishing technology. Whatever that fish was eating, it worked. Lake Huron covers 23,000 square miles and connects to both Superior and Michigan. Its Georgian Bay section alone could occupy a serious angler for an entire season. The northern tier lakes demand patience. Cold water slows everything down. The fish, the presentations, the whole pace of the day. Rocky structure replaces flooded timber up there. Instead of pitching to stumps, you're hopping jigs across gravel points and ledges dropping into deep cold water. The management side of this matters more than people realize. When water levels get manipulated for flood control, fish die by the thousands. Anglers have watched it happen firsthand. One YouTuber documented a lake drain and found a dead tiger trout he estimated at 15 pounds. He said he was lost for words. The state record might have died in the mud. Conservation programs work when they're actually followed. The Texas and Florida models prove that protecting big fish long enough to reproduce changes an entire fishery's ceiling. Every lake on this list earned its spot through documented fish, real records, and anglers who keep coming back. The next section gets into the ones that almost nobody talks about. The lakes nobody talks about loudly are often the ones producing the biggest fish. That's where this section lives. The overlooked, the underrated, and the genuinely surprising. Lake Seminole sits where Georgia, Florida, and Alabama meet. Hydrilla so thick you can practically walk on it. And largemouth that have never seen tournament pressure. Wheeler Lake in Alabama runs alongside the Tennessee River and gets completely ignored next to Guntersville. That's exactly why the bass fishing there stays so consistently good. Mark Stevenson caught the first share lunker entry ever recorded. 17 pounds, 67 hundredths of an ounce, Lake Fork, 1986. That fish started an entire movement. Lake Texoma straddles Oklahoma and Texas and produces striped bass that genuinely shock people. 30-pound fish are not unusual there during the spring shad spawn. Truman Lake in Missouri is one of the most underutilized crappie fisheries in the Midwest. The brush pile density there is almost absurd. Anglers have been sinking structure for decades. Lake Havasu on the Arizona-California border runs hot year-round. Stripers, largemouth, smallmouth, and catfish all share the same water, which almost never happens at that scale. Mille Lacs in Minnesota lost its walleye season entirely for several years due to population concerns. It came back, but the regulations there are still tighter than anywhere else in the state. That kind of management pressure changes how anglers approach a fishery. You stop keeping fish and start thinking about what the lake looks like in 10 years. Lake Ouachita in Arkansas is the clearest lake in the state, visibility past 20 feet in some spots. Spotted bass thrive there in ways they simply don't in murkier water. Spotted bass get dismissed because they run smaller than largemouth, but a 4-pound spot on light tackle in clear water fights harder than most fish twice its size. Flaming Gorge Reservoir crosses Utah and Wyoming and holds a lake trout record that still stands, 50 pounds even, caught in 1994. Nobody has touched it since. The depth there reaches over 400 feet in sections. Lake trout in that cold, dark water grow at a pace that makes most other fisheries look rushed. Chesapeake Bay isn't a lake, but its tributary rivers, the Susquehanna, the Potomac, produce striped bass runs that draw anglers from 6 states every spring without fail. Lake Winnebago in Wisconsin is the largest inland lake in the state. Its sturgeon season runs for 16 days in February and draws thousands of spearfishers onto the ice. Sturgeon there can exceed 100 pounds and live past 100 years. You're not just catching a fish, you're catching something older than most people's grandparents. Lake Tohopekaliga in Florida, locals call it Lake Toho, produces giant bass in February and March when the spawn stacks fish shallow and visible. Guides there charge premium rates during spawn season and still book out months ahead. When the fish are bedding on Toho, word travels fast. Bull Shoals Lake on the Arkansas-Missouri border runs cold below the dam and warm above it. That temperature split creates 2 completely different fisheries within the same body of water. The tailwater below Bull Shoals Dam produces brown trout over 20 pounds. The reservoir above it produces largemouth over 10. Same address, completely different fish. Every state has a version of this, a lake that rewards the angler willing to look past the obvious choice. The famous lakes are famous for a reason, but they're not the whole story. The final section pulls it all together, the patterns that separate the best waters from the rest, and what actually makes a lake capable of producing a record-class fish. What separates a record-class lake from a decent one comes down to 3 things: food, structure, and time. Fish need all 3 working together. Forage density matters more than most anglers admit. A lake stuffed with shad and bluegill grows bass twice as fast as one running lean. That's why Lake Chickamauga in Tennessee keeps producing. Shad populations there are almost absurdly thick, and the bass have nowhere to go but up in weight. Watts Bar Lake, also in Tennessee, sits just upstream and gets a fraction of the pressure. Same forage base, same structure, far fewer boats. Pressure is the variable nobody wants to talk about honestly. A Great Lake fished hard every weekend eventually trains its fish to ignore most presentations. That's the real argument for fishing second-tier lakes. The fish haven't been educated yet, and the angler willing to drive an extra hour usually wins. Lake Dardanelle in Arkansas produces striped bass that most people associate with coastal fisheries. 40-pound fish show up there with enough regularity to stop being surprising. Ross Barnett Reservoir in Mississippi gets overlooked almost universally. Its crappie fishing in March rivals anything in Kentucky or Tennessee. The brush pile network is enormous. Lake Lanier in Georgia sits 45 miles north of Atlanta and still produces quality spotted bass despite absorbing enormous recreational pressure every summer weekend. Spotted bass on Lanier runs smaller than largemouth, but the lake's clarity and rocky structure make every fish a legitimate fight on light tackle. Rainy Lake on the Minnesota-Ontario border rarely makes American lists because half of it is in Canada. The walleye and northern pike there are genuinely world-class. Cross-border fisheries like Rainy Lake operate under 2 sets of regulations simultaneously. Knowing which side of the line you're on matters, the rules are not the same. Lake Sakakawea in North Dakota is the 3rd largest reservoir in the country by volume. Its walleye and Chinook salmon fishery is one of the most underreported in the nation. The Missouri River system that feeds it carries nutrients that keep the forage base strong even through brutal winters. Cold slows the fish, it doesn't stop them. Elephant Butte Reservoir in New Mexico holds the state record for striped bass, 54 pounds, 8 ounces caught in 2001. That record is still standing. Desert reservoirs age differently than southern lakes. Less vegetation, harder structure, clearer water. The fish that survive there tend to be older and considerably harder to fool. The pattern across every region is consistent. The best lakes share deep forage, varied structure, and management that gives big fish enough time to actually get big. No single state owns the conversation. That's the honest truth about chasing big fish. The map keeps changing. Records fall, lakes recover, and the angler paying attention finds the window before everyone else does. Every lake on this list earned its reputation through real fish and real documentation. The rankings shift, but the underlying quality of these waters doesn't disappear overnight. The best fishing of your life is probably on a lake you haven't tried yet. That's not a bad thing. It means there's still something worth going after. If this helped you find your next water, share it with someone who needs a new lake. Subscribe. There's a full state-by-state breakdown coming that goes even deeper.